Welcome back to the latest episode of the Key and Mang audio experience. I'm your host, Mang. As always, I'm with my fellow co-host, Key. Key, what's good?
What's up, man? How are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm lovely. I can't complain.
Love it. Love it. Today we got another special one. On today's episode, we have the creator of the movement system, the course to take if you want to pass your CSCS. He also holds his DPT and is a certified strength and conditioning specialist. And his mission is to improve your understanding of human movement and make the world stronger. Matt Casturo. Matt, thanks for joining us on the pod.
Thank you for the warm intro there.
Of course, of course. We're gonna jump right into it. Could you tell us a little bit about what attracted you to PT and then what attracted you to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Let's start all the way at the beginning since we want to dive into this. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my parents actually own a junkyard. So it's super unique, but they were entrepreneurs, a really small yard that essentially just handled like tires and cars and scrap metal and stuff like that. So I grew up just every day in a tow truck and just being around like entrepreneurship from that their lens and I think I learned a lot about like hard work there. And then whenever I ended up getting into high school, I did a lot of projects outside of school, so I did all kinds of stuff in sports, and initially went to Ohio State actually for physics engineering. But I figured out in my first year that I didn't really like working with computers as much as I liked working with people. So that's whenever I switched to exercise science. And I've always had a interest still in the physics aspect, like biomechanics and stuff like that. But overall, I think I just like working with people and like solving movement related problems more so than like math problems. So I've kind of navigated that direction. And, with that, I ended up actually just introducing myself to someone who was studying for the CSCS exam. And they were like having a lot of trouble with some of the detailed concepts. And I'm like, man, I actually like explaining this stuff. So once I was done kind of tutoring him, I just made some videos about it and started taking off about, what everyone wanted to learn. So over time, I found out that I really like teaching the most. So that's where I try to spend most of my time. And then sometime as well, obviously, learning and coaching and a bunch of other things.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
man. I was gonna ask what what did you learn from your like parents having that junkyard business that you apply to your businesses today?
Yeah, I mean it's a little different, right? So there's a lot of like principles though, right? There's principles and there's like things you do day to day. And the day-to-day things you do is very different, but a lot of the principles are the same. Like whether a customer came into the junkyard with $1 worth of aluminum cans or $1,000 worth of expensive metal, you just treat everyone right and you give everyone your full attention and your time. And I think that's really what's helped me with like a lot with my entrepreneurship journey is like I'm not afraid to take time with like individual people and answer individual questions. I think when people worry about too much about followers and numbers and likes, you kind of lose those individual connections and like what actually matters to real people who you're talking to. So you just try to keep it balanced with that.
So when you were tutoring that one student trying to pass her was that CSCS, was that during undergrad or was that during PT school?
I think it was actually right. I had a gap year, so this is an interesting story. I went to undergrad at Ohio State, and I graduated and was kind of interested in a bunch of different things. And I'd done a personal training business through undergrad, and at the time, I actually got rejected to all the PT schools I applied to. So I think I applied to like 6 schools, got waitlisted, put on the back burner, and then just didn't get in. So I had a year to basically get some work experience in, and that year was great. Honestly, I'm really glad it worked out this way because in that year I did a bunch of different things. I did corporate fitness, where you essentially work with a company and you go into their office and they have a training room in their office where you can train different employees. It has legitimate weights and stuff like that. That was a great experience. But one that I really liked was actually strength and conditioning. So I got a high school strength and conditioning job with a couple teams in my area in Columbus, Ohio at the time, and got to work with people hands on. And that just really got me interested more so in learning more about strength and conditioning. I still had a lot of questions though about movement stuff that I was seeing that I couldn't really figure out, which is what led me ultimately to reapplying to PT school and deciding to go back that route rather than staying with strength and conditioning. But at the time, I was just diving into all the things that I could think about with training my athletes. Like, why are they moving this way? Why are they picking this certain weight up? Why are they, what are they doing and why? And that led me to, I had already passed the CSCS during undergrad, but like really dive back into that information even deeper and answer even more questions, meet other people studying. And then that's kind of when it started to take off. And then throughout PT school, I just made more and more videos. At the time, only, I don't know, a handful of people were watching them. But over time, got better at how we were making videos and how I could articulate concepts. And a lot of times it was the same concept that I would teach one way, and then a couple months later, revisit it, explain it a little bit better. And then over time, as you get better and better at explaining things, you kind of connect to people more, and those videos started taking off. And just honestly, just have been consistent with it that ever since. Just making better and better videos each week.
When you were making these videos in PT school, like what were your classmates and like teachers saying? And did they know about it? And if they did, like how are they reacting?
So I've always been really entrepreneurial. And we could talk about some of the interesting stuff that I did in PT school with that. But I ended up hiring, I think, 6 out of my 50 classmates to some extent as contractors for my business by the end of PT school. So out of the 3 years, I kind of just evolved the business. So at first it was just videos and stuff, but I realized there's a lot more that I want to cover than I could. So I ended up hiring some people to help me outline content. And just because you guys know, your time is limited in PT school. And I was also training personal training clients. At the time, I think whenever I started PT school, I was at 15 clients or something like that. So I ended up having to figure out a way to scale that where I can actually manage my time. So I ended up hiring a couple of my classmates as into my personal training business to train clients essentially in their home, and then through the movement system personal training at that time business. And so we did all kinds of different stuff. And I tried to actually, in any way I could, whenever I had classmates who were interested in some of the stuff that I was doing, involve them and make them a part of it.
That's some boss stuff. That's really tough. But then did you get any of your teachers finding your stuff and you can't put this content out because you're a student PT, or you shouldn't be putting this content out there?
No, I actually never had a problem with that, to be honest. And I actually used some of the facilities. I would just stay after class and use their whiteboards and skeletons and make videos. Sometimes even during labs, and they didn't really say anything, luckily.
That's awesome. No, I love that because you can just utilize the resources around you. And like you said, the time is limited, but you are creative with how you use the resources around you to get to what you were trying to accomplish. So then once you're in PT school, is that when the movement system, you launched the course?
Yeah, so it actually started out as a mentorship. It was just it honestly just kind of naturally evolved, the educational side of the movement system business. So naturally, the personal training side was what was actually giving me enough money to pay rent and food and stuff. But then I liked doing the teaching, so I just did it on Facebook Lives and on YouTube and stuff without any monetization or anything associated with that for probably about a year. So was making better and better videos, making Facebook Lives, inviting people to the group, making Instagram videos that were just free, and then getting people to cross platforms. So people on Instagram should check out the podcast. People on the podcast check out the YouTube. People on YouTube check out the Facebook group. Just getting people to see all the stuff that I had before really trying to sell anything. But at a certain point, we had a group of maybe 1,000 people on Facebook that I just built up over a couple months or a year. And they were just saying can you structure all this stuff? Because you're doing a video, we're going to cover biomechanics, we're going to cover endocrine, we're going to cover anatomy. And it was just kind of random. They're like, can you just structure this in a way that I could just do it chapter by chapter? And I'm like, okay, well, let's do a mentorship. Let's do a private group. And at the time, I think we charged $75, and we did a private group. And each week we did I think like 1 or 2 chapters, and I kind of worked through, a section of the CSCS content. So it just started as a private group, but then eventually I was like, yeah, there's some limitations to like how this group is working. Like it's not that easy to navigate back to like the order and stuff. So I'm like, well, what if I just made it a course? So I just like Googled how to make a online course and like essentially just figured it out. And like ever since then, it's just been refining. So taking out some of the questions that weren't as good, wording them a little bit better, making the videos a little bit better. So that way the experience for the user is just better and better and better each, month. So even this month, like yesterday, I was just going back through the chapter, breaking it all down and the small tweaks, like let's change up the wording of this, let's change up that and make it a little bit better.
With the Facebook group, did you have like, was this your idea, or did you have like business coaches helping you like structure your business into like this way?
Yeah, so just I think have a pretty natural like instinct for like doing some entrepreneurial stuff. So I had no business coaches up until the last year. And then this last year I had some like bigger problems that I didn't necessarily like know how to solve. So I did work with a business coach in the last about last year or so. But for the first 4 or 5 years of my business, I kind of just figured everything out. That said, I did have mentors. So I had mentors who were just doing similar things that I wanted to do, and I would reach out to them and ask them questions. A lot of people are afraid to reach out to someone because they have more followers or they have a business that's like more developed and refined than kind of where you're at the time. But like people like want to help and mentor you. So like as long as you're respectful of their time and also trying to like help them in a similar way, I would really encourage like people to reach out to other people doing what they want to do.
And then when you talked about like bringing people from YouTube to the Facebook group or Facebook group to the Instagram
Mhm.
page, did you start with one platform that you decided you were going to build out, or was it, let me try and get my content out as many places as possible and then hope people find me that way?
Mhm.
What was your philosophy on that?
So, I always like to say like do something that's sustainable. For me, like just being pretty busy at the time, like Instagram kind of worked because I could just put something out there that took 45 minutes or an hour to make a short video and a caption. And that was like a pretty good system for me. But eventually I was like, there's some things that I want to talk about more. Like there's some things that I want to explain more than like a 60-second video. So that was whenever I actually started the podcast, the Movement System Podcast Next. And I did that in like a pretty sustainable way where I was just doing like 1, maybe 2 episodes a month, which is what I've kept up with for I think 4 years, 5 years now. Um, because to me, I don't want to talk like a bunch of times a week at length on a podcast. I just wanted it to serve the purpose of like being able to give longer form discussions whenever I have something that I can teach people about and want to communicate. But for some people, they're going to want to do like podcast first and then Instagram second, or they want to do YouTube and just focus on YouTube. So I don't think like one approach is necessarily the best. For me, I started out with Instagram, then went into the podcast, and then went into YouTube. YouTube was like there's like a barrier to entry there because like you have to have some editing skills to like really rank. I mean, you can put videos out without editing, and especially with shorts now, so you can actually start, I think, even easier now. But you just do what works for you to get the content out there. Like my only whole thought was like whatever I'm learning or whatever I know that I know other people would want to know, what's like the best way that I can teach this. So whenever I would learn like bioenergetics, I'm like, oh, I really have this down, like I really can explain like how this works, but I need a giant whiteboard and a video to be able to do this. So I'm not going to do a podcast on it. I'm going to start a YouTube video, and that was like one of our first YouTube videos. Because it just made sense to teach it in that way.
When you were going through this process and like creating content and like building out your social medias, all while being in PT school with limited time, like did you feel like school was pulling you away from like your ultimate goal, or did you feel like it was kind of a means to an end and it'll help you in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, so I just took like an interesting approach to this. Like I didn't worry about grades very much aside from like passing. But that was like that really took me to my second year to do that, because my first year I was still concerned. I was like, I need to be able to get accepted to a residency and I need to be able to, do this route that I think that is what I need. But like by my second year, I realized like probably not going to be the route for me. Like I just like to have my own like control of things more so, and like some people do really well with like a structure that someone else sets, but I feel like I do much better like setting my own structure and parameters, and like um I'm like fairly self-motivated that way. So I kind of knew that's the route that I wanted to go. So um I would say like, yeah, the things that I was learning in PT school, there were some things that I was like super into and I would learn it really well. And I would just crush exams because it was like something that I was interested in. And then we'd hit another class like pharmacology, I think, that I'm like, I'm not going to prescribe medicines, and I don't really care that much about these individual medications. So I would just learn the very, very bare minimum and get like a C on every quiz and like just study really hard for the test. I ended up getting in trouble a little bit because I didn't really do homework, because I'm like, well, in PT school, a lot of times the homework's worth like 5-10% of your grade and the exam's worth like 80%. So I'm like, I'm just gonna study for the exams. Like, and then as long as I do well on those, like I'd rather put like, if I have 2 hours, like I'd rather put 2 hours into the exam than the homework. Because I know that'll be what pays off the most, like highest return on investment of time. But you're not supposed to do that, I guess. But yeah, I would say like, overall I tried to like focus on what I wanted to know the most, and then just kind of do the minimum for some of the other stuff. There's some a case to be made for like, oh, you want to be like a well-rounded clinician and really know these other skills, but I'm like, there's just not going to be that much carryover to some of these skills and information that I'm learning, like where I'm going. So I was okay with like putting some of that stuff on the back burner.
Yeah, I kind of approached PT school the exact same way, and it took me to my second year as well to think like that. And I think it's easier to do that when you kind of have a vision of how you want your like life or career to look. I think when people
Yeah.
are like so like focused on being like well-rounded clinician, they start to get into like that habit, like chasing grades. And sometimes I feel like PT school was a bit of a competition. And I was just like, I'm not doing this. But
Yeah.
that's interesting because I feel like most people don't do that.
Yeah.
When it comes to like finishing school and now building your business, is there anything like from school that you would have done differently?
From school specifically, I actually liked how school went for me. Like I said, like the gap year was like really good. I ended up getting into like the program that I wanted to at Ohio State, like the second time around. So, I had to retake anatomy and get some experience and stuff. But then I got into school, and I learned anatomy like really well actually, and some of those first year classes really well. And then by second year, when we got into some of the stuff that I was interested in, I diverted some of that time to business interests. I think it worked out fine. Like I probably wouldn't change anything.
And now that you're all done with school, graduated, been out of PT school for a couple of years, how do you implement the movement side of things and PT aspect, rehab aspect of things, and the strength and conditioning world, and merge the two together?
That's a good question. Yeah. So I will say like my path is different than I think most people, because I'm spending a lot of time on the education side. So like more than half of my week is like more so as a coach and educator. And that just means that you're making a lot of your decisions from the strength and conditioning lens, because you're not treating like specific deficits associated with an injury. But that said, I still spend some time on rehab stuff. I would just say like it's helped me a lot to like expand who I'm learning from. So I learn a lot from like coaches as well, and um as well as like coach clinicians. So yeah, I mean like there's like individual like cases where like the rehab side and the biomechanics matter a lot, and then there's individual cases where um like a lot of strength and conditioning principles can solve the problem. Like it really just comes down to solving movement problems, and there's a lot of ways you can do that.
So then when it comes to solving your problems, what are some of the like one big problem you're trying to solve right now with the movement system, or just in
Yeah,
general?
that's a good one. right now I want to make the best video that exists in the world for any strength conditioning and PT related topic. Like that's my goal. So if you search shoulder injury, if you search like right now, I have to do a little bit more specific than that because there's a lot of big channels with pretty good content. But like my whole goal right now is to contribute to the quality content that's out there, and that naturally takes away from some of the lesser quality content that exists out there. So yeah, I just want to contribute to that because I think like it empowers like people to make their own like decisions regarding like their own bodies and like how they're managing injuries and like making movement related decisions in their life. So the more information that's out there, the better. I think some people are hesitant to that because they think that, oh, you have to go to a physical therapist to individually assess and diagnose your individual case. And it's just not true that like people are going to get a universally good experience. So I think empowering them with like online education is really beneficial. And I think that that's what's going to be continued in the future. There's certainly, definitely, by all means, still a place for people to work in person with PTs. Plenty of people need that, and plenty of people will do that. But the online education piece and helping people understand their injuries and treatment decisions and exercise, like what they can do, is really important as well.
I agree. I like that because I feel like the educational component is a lot of times what's missing in like a PT session. I feel like that's what gets the most carryover, and a lot of times it's missing because like sometimes you don't have time with the patient and things like that. So I feel like the online component is something that can drive better results, whether that's an online component that's given to you through your PT or through like content like yours. So I think that's definitely going to be a big like game changer going forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to ask. I saw one of your posts before. It was about. It was a while ago. I think it was
Okay.
when you graduated PT school. It was about not deciding to take the NPT, and I think this is like so cool, so bold. Like, did you take a long time to come to this decision about not taking that test? And did you get like people telling you like maybe you shouldn't do that? Like, why not just take it? Like, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So my second or maybe like right into the third year of PT school, we had someone come and visit like the PT program. Her name's Steffi Cohen. I'm not sure if you're familiar. She's like a weightlifter, uh, like influencer out of Miami now. And she's done like broken world records and all this stuff. And she came to our PT program because she was coming to Columbus, Ohio for the Arnold. Um, and actually, ironically, the Arnold got shut down. So it was like right at like it was in March of 2020. And it was like the last in-person event, like it was like the 15th of March. The Arnold, the big convention expo got shut down where she was going to do, I don't know, like I don't know if she was competing there, or like maybe just presenting and like going to like sponsor booths and stuff like that. But she ended up coming to our program and talking to the private practice club. I think it was like private practice group. It was like maybe 20 of us in all three classes who were like interested in learning more about private practice. And she just talked about, she's like, yeah, I just didn't take the NPT and PTE. And then I was like, oh, you can do that? Like you could just not do it? And she's like, yeah, and she kind of talked about like her route of like starting like hybrid and like where her time goes with that. And our routes aren't the exact same, but I actually ended up talking to her for probably 15 or 20 minutes after the presentation she gave about like my situation. I'm like, like I'm interested in, teaching and education. And this is like kind of what I started with my, education side, like the business and the personal training side. She's like, yeah, just she just basically like expanded my ideas of like what's possible, because she's like, there's some limitations with like once you're actually a practicing physical therapist in terms of like coaching and training across like state borders even. So I just didn't want that. Like I wanted to be able to coach and train athletes without limitations. And the sacrifices that you can't really treat. Like I don't have ACL patients, and I don't have like patients who are like essentially rehabbing a specific injury, I'm meeting people like a lot farther along on the rehab to performance spectrum. But I'm like that, I'm comfortable in that area, and that's kind of where I'm interested in. So it worked out for my individual case to go that route.
Looking back, if someone were going through a similar experience as what you had gone through and making that decision, would you just tell them that to explore other options and see what works best for them? Or how would you help people make that decision whether or not to take the NPTE
Yeah, so
if
I think
someone asked you?
most people probably should just take the MPTE, to be honest, because it does like give you more options to be able to treat as a physical therapist. But in the individual situation where you're like my individual situation, like anything I'm still actually like somewhat involved in the rehab process, but it's just that I go to a clinic and like actually like film content for like what people are doing as they're in the rehab process, and I'm not like the one, entering into the medical record and making treatment decisions. And I'm fine with that, like because I'm still learning from the process, and I can still coach people that are farther along in the rehab process, and that works for me, but it does limit you, so I don't know. It's just an individual decision. Like, talk to other people who have like, if you're interested, like, you can talk to me. Like, just send me a message. I respond to like 40 messages a day to people like wondering about stuff like this. So like, yeah, just like talk to other people who have done something alternative and see if an alternative route is what's best for you.
Yeah, I think it always comes down to you knowing like what you want. I think if you kind of don't know what you want, it's gonna be hard for you to make that decision. So I think once you get clear on like the direction you want to head in, the like answer may become more clear for you. So I think it just comes down to like knowing what direction you want to go in ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, like I've seen like a lot of people like just to expand this beyond just like my experience and Steffi's experience, like I've seen people who got into coaching, so they maybe had a few years, like 3 or 5 years of um physical therapist experience, like working with people in the clinic, and then they're like, I really just want to turn this into a coaching practice, and then all of a sudden they picked up a handful of runners, and then a group of runners, and then an audience of runners that follow them, and then like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can really navigate to coaching if I want to, or I can um navigate to like the marketing side. There's people in that area as well, like helping other like private practice owners and helping other PTs navigate like the business and entrepreneurship world. And if you have like a interest in that and an inclination towards that type of work, then you can do that. And like as long as you're solving people's problems, like you could find like a valuable place to be. Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I think also when you mentioned like someone maybe transitioning from getting a group of runners to then building an audience of runners, when it came to building your audience, what do you think helps you the most with um building that movement system audience and people wanting to learn more about strength and conditioning and pass a test and movement problems?
Yeah. So I've always told this line of like, and I don't know what's optimal here, so I don't know what to tell you. I could just tell you what I did, but there's like a relationship here between quality of content and like volume of content. And I've seen people go too far with either one, and I've gone too far with either one in the past. Like if you worry so much about like the one Instagram post that you're gonna make that's gonna be perfect, it's probably only gonna get like 10% more attention than like if you just made it pretty good. So there's a balance between like putting out enough information, which most people aren't doing, to like really be building like a big audience and like making this like a whole career. Like you just have to do a lot of work. Like I've probably posted, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content. I make 500-ish videos a year, like 30 podcasts, 52 long form YouTube videos that are like edited and scripted and like well put out. Like it's a lot of work. The volume of content that you need, but you also need really good quality content. So there's some people that say like, oh, you just post anything, like just post what you're doing and whatnot. But like it's not that interesting. Like you also need to make sure that you're really thoughtful about like okay, what's the hook that's going to interest people? Like, what's the one concrete thing that I'm like teaching or explaining like in this post? And I always run through like with every post that I'm going to do, like 5 different or 10 different or 20 different ways I could say it. Like, if I hook this way and then explain it that way, and like it's going to come to this conclusion. And like over time, I've figured out like almost in my head, I'm like, if I do it this way, it's going to get this much. If I do it this way, this other group of people will like understand it more. So yeah, like, and it's not like you're going to get this right away. Like, you have to put your reps in. So what's honestly helped me the most is like being really consistent with a content schedule. Like, I do a YouTube video every Monday at noon. I do a podcast on the 15th and the 1st. I do 5 to 6 Instagram posts a week, and I do a couple TikToks now, which I'm just getting into a little bit. But just having a schedule of like when you do things can really help, and then just try to make the best quality thing by your deadline and then post it.
Is it just you, or do you have help with
My wife's
building some
a
out?
PT also. My wife, Katie, is a physical therapist also, and she actually is like behind the scenes doing a lot of the editing at this point. Like, initially it was kind of just me, like, and then once she graduated, she was a year ahead of me, so she graduated and started to work at a PT clinic, but also do some of the stuff that like editing and stuff like that for the business on the side. Then when we actually moved out to Vegas, she's now doing this like full time, like as her job, um like helping with editing. And well, now we have all kinds of stuff, because we have like a Friday for email list where I probably put like a couple hours of research into this. And I have a part-time assistant as well, Danielle, and she's great. So she and I get on calls like a couple times a week and go through like research articles about like how we're gonna outline content, and we go to do like course updates, how we're gonna like cover, for example, a conditioning with like, we had some feedback on our CU approved course called Program Design 101, which a lot of people after they take their CSCS want to learn like more detailed stuff on program design. So they take our program design course, but we had some feedback that they're like, we learned a lot about strength and hypertrophy and power and plyometrics and all this stuff, but you didn't really cover conditioning. So I'm like, okay, feedback. Like, and then we just got on call for like a couple hours, a couple weeks in a row, did a literature review on all the conditioning information, read some conditioning books, talked to some conditioning experts, and then condensed it all into a conditioning module to add to our course. So like a lot of that stuff's like, it's kind of behind the scenes. Like, you can't really see it like as a front facing thing. Like, you see like the Instagram posts, you see like the podcast that we create and stuff like that. But a lot of the business building occurs like behind the scenes, in terms of like doing all the research for the content to make sure that it's actually really high quality content that people are getting. And and like it seems maybe like I just like have a natural like talent for teaching or something like that, but like, and that's probably true to some extent. Like, I can explain concepts fairly well, but a lot of that just comes from like practice, like behind the scenes. Like, we're sitting there and like writing scripts of videos like one way, and then editing it and writing scripts another way. And if I have a YouTube title, I'm usually writing 15 titles and then like going through them and eliminating and refining and picking like the best title. So a lot of it's just like putting in a lot of work to outlining and scripting and researching behind the scenes to make really good content. And we have a couple of people to help along the way.
That's pretty dope. On average, how long would you say it takes for you and your team to create a YouTube video, like from start to finish?
Yeah. So the ROI, even to this point, I think almost 45,000 or 50,000 subscribers. And the ROI on from YouTube ad revenue is like, I'm probably making like $2 or $3 an hour, because of how much time it does take to make quality YouTube videos. And this is, remember, like 3 years in. But on the back end of things, we're collecting email addresses and helping people know more about our courses. So not directly from ad revenue, we do end up making like a good amount of money from the other business side of things that we've built underneath the YouTube videos. But for a YouTube video, like for example, we just did a vertical jump video, or we did some collaboration videos with like other people in the area. Typical timeline on that is probably around 8 to 10 hours of work, like probably an hour or two of scripting. We'll give it like an hour to film, like including like B-roll and stuff like that. And then 4 hours, 5 hours maybe to edit like all the, the stuff out and like put all the graphics on and the words. And then like maybe like, I don't know, like another hour to like review it, post it, write the caption, timestamps, anything like that. So it's a good amount of time. And like a lot of these videos still are getting a few thousand views, but out of those few thousand views, a couple, maybe 100 people will opt into like getting a free download of a program, or some of the free resources that we have. And then some of those people will be interested in learning even more than the free resources that we have, and kind of connect with the way that we're teaching and the way that we have our content out there. So they'll decide to sign up for a full course. And it's hard to see, like, especially early on, because I remember like some of the like whiteboard videos, we were getting $0. Like we had no back end business stuff. We had no YouTube ad revenue and anything, like in a couple hundred subscribers, and we're making these videos that are taking like hours and hours to film. It seems like it just wouldn't be worth it. But if you're consistent enough for long enough, and you are diligent about like gradually building the back end of things and keeping refining them, it can really turn into a full business, slower or faster than you think, depending on your expectations.
Yeah, I like that. The consistency, really loving what you do. And as you spend more time, like a lot of the time with the scripting, the editing, putting out podcasts, all the stuff that you have, how do you make sure that you take care of yourself mentally and physically while making sure you're spending time with the wife, spending all your other responsibilities? How do you make sure, how do you balance it all?
That's a good question. Yeah, and I've always been like kind of like uh, like self-motivated. Like I want to work like all the time. So like for me, it's like I just have to like make sure that I'm balancing like taking time to not work. And it sometimes does help to put that like on the calendar, like, okay, from noon on, I'm just not going to work on Wednesday or whatever, and setting out times to not work is helpful. Because otherwise you kind of end up in this zone where you're like always kind of working, like you're kind of answering messages and you're kind of thinking about your content and you're kind of thinking about that. And you have to do that for a little while, especially like through PT school. I had to do that a lot because there's a lot to do. But over time, you can create some time freedom with like a lot of our systems are really automated well now, so that someone can watch a video that we made 2 years ago, opt into an email list, and that email list is automatic. So the emails that we wrote a year ago and then we refined again 3 months ago automatically send out to them. And I'm not like having to actively do that now necessarily. But there's always more you can do, right? There's always projects you can do. So it's a tough balance there.
So get your systems in check and do the work early, and then it'll pay off in the long run. That's what it sounds like, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you can go overboard with that, where you're like just really focused on like passive revenue and like all that stuff. But like I've always tried to also be sure to like treat the people in front of me like that I am in contact with today. Like there's nothing more important than like right now today. So like be here also. But also like spend some amount of your time building systems in your business for the future.
I like it. I like it. Last couple questions before we start wrapping up here.
Sure, yeah.
Where do you see yourself and the movement system in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I'm not like a huge like 5-year plan person, just because like I feel like it's hard to predict. Like 5 years ago, I like wouldn't know. Like actually 5 years ago, I wasn't really doing much of at all what I'm doing now. So it's really hard for me to say if 5 years from now it's going to be similar or not. That said, I think the focus is still going to be on like the main things have stayed the same. Like the main things is like I enjoy teaching, so I want to teach and teach people in the best way possible. So better graphics, better scripts, better research, better guests, and better conversation skills, things like that. Like there's a lot that I still want to work on with that. Um, but I don't know. Like there's a lot that's up in the air. Like, will I be doing like it's something in person? Like maybe starting like a training facility? I don't know. Will I just be focused on videos then, or like traveling and teaching? Because that's like certainly an option even at this point. Like I know a couple of people who have seminars and stuff that they teach and travel to. Maybe we'll go that route. I don't know.
If I like it, I like it. I think 5 goals is 5 years is some people like those like 5, 10 year goals, and then some people are like, let me look at 3 months, let me look at a quarter and see what I want to accomplish in a quarter. So I like the perspective on that. My last
Yeah.
question. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say like you kind of have to stay focused somewhat on like what you're doing now because I made this mistake a couple times in the past. Is like chasing what someone's doing who's been doing it for a really long time and is doing it really well and just trying to like jump right to that. So like I think there's a lot of content creators out there who make really, really good content. Um, it's really well refined and established and it's important not to like compare yourself to that because like I fall into that trap even now and I'm like, man, like if I could just make content as good as that, but like there's still a big gap, even like there's a big gap between like the content that I was making a few years ago and now, but there's a big gap between where I want to get to and now. I can't jump that gap. Like you have to take it one step at a time, like improve your content by 10% towards your goal. But sometimes I've made mistakes like where I'm trying to reach out to like this really big broad topic like if I make a video on shoulder pain, it's actually not going to do as well as if I make the best video that I can right now on something more niche, like the rotator cuff anatomy or something like that. You could actually rank for. Like you have to kind of play in your league, if that makes sense. Because if I make the big shoulder pain video, it's going to be on the 7th page. No one's going to see it. No one's going to learn from it, even if I put a lot of time and information into it. It's just not competing with like those bigger channels. Whereas if I just make something that's a little bit better, niche, that can do well, that's the route to go. So like wherever you're starting out, don't try to jump to like where I am or where someone else is. Just go a little bit above where you're at each day, and then that's how you build up.
I like that. I think that's a good place to end it right there. I was going to ask one more, but I think you kind of answered it based on that.
Okay. Yeah. If you have anything else, go for it though.
All right, I'll ask it and see if you
Sure.
answer the
Yeah.
same way. If you answer it the same way, knowing everything that you know now, what would you tell? What's the one thing you would tell younger Matt?
Man, that's like a big question. Um, yeah, like there's always a balance between like reaching for your goals and like where you want to be and like also being present like with what you're doing right now. And I've struggled with that in the past. And I think a lot of people who are entrepreneurial and have this like big vision for where they want to get to really struggle with like enjoying what they're doing right now. But like everything that you're doing like right now is like very valuable. And there's people who are going to relate better to where you're at right now than they will to you a few years from now. So like put the content out and put like your ideas out right now because someone who's just getting into, for example, personal training and just knows the very basics, they don't want to follow someone who like knows like very detailed science and all this stuff that's way over their head. They just need to follow someone who knows a little bit more than them and can teach them things to help bring them up a little bit, right? So you don't have to be the expert for your content and your ideas to be really valuable. Wherever you're at with your experience, there's going to be people that really relate to that, and just the practice of like being present and teaching your ideas and like putting it out there is like really helpful in terms of like building up over time.
A bar, a bar.
All right.
Where can people find you if they have more questions, if they want to look more into your stuff?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me on. And if people are interested in learning more, like I put out content on a couple different places. It's all the movement system. So if you search the movement system on most of your platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, podcast, Facebook, you'll find me.
Perfect. Y'all know there's no excuses. So if you want to learn how to pass your CSCS or want a cricket program or
Yeah.
learn how to program in general, Matt got it all. So Matt, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us on the pod and taking some time out of your Saturday.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
I'll catch
And
you
we'll
guys in
catch
the
you on
next
the
episode.
yeah.